in college, I only eat like pasta, but I also realize how bad that is for me. So I've been trying to change it up, and it's been hard to get out of the habit of just making what I know to be the easiest.
Excellent points. It is one of the most directly engaging devotional arts to cook for Krishna and the devotees. And regarding the diet, I was thinking lately, in fact, I was just talking to a couple devotees about it, how it might be nice to have some awareness raising conversations or short segments about what you eat is important because whatever habits you start when you're younger and then it goes later, and then it's not necessarily everything that comes to you. You have to select if you find out what's best to run your biological robot and try to do as much as possible to stay healthy. You can never start too early. Thanks very much, Manurisaki. Sharing realizations for 500. Go ahead, Mukundhari. I see you smiling. Oh, Anapaini, go ahead.
I'm looking her. You can go ahead first.
I just smiled and raised my hand. No, but just a small one. So a few days ago, I was reading about, um, someone engaged in deity service, got injured or something, and then they were just praying to their worshipable deities at the temple that, like, almost like, come on, Krishna, you got to fix me so that I can serve you better. Now, I'm of course very far from deity service, but I do my own little bit, whatever I do managerially. So I was just thinking, what do I struggle with? And today I was at the temple just a few hours before your jam, and it's gonna be I'm gonna be away for a month. So I was meeting Radha Gokulananda before going away on travels for a month. I was just praying. I never planned to pray anything, but just spontaneously that thing which I read about, that deity service devotee, came to my mind, and I was thinking, okay, what's holding me back? And one by one in my head, first of all came time. Time is scarce. I'm bound by time. Then came capacity. I'm bound by lack of capacity or ability or ineptitude. Then came excitement or energy, etc. And then one by one, it was just so magical in front of Krishna, in front of Radha Gokulananda. Just those verses came in my head randomly, and I'm not even that good with verses. But the fact that, Krishna's time. So I was like, Krishna, your time, you can make time. Please help me get some more time to serve you. Uh, then Krishna says, I'm the ability in man in the Bhagavad Gita to Krishna. Well, I don't have much ability, but if you like, if you so desire, you can make me more able and capable and efficient and productive to do more for you in the limited scope I have. And well, utsaha or excitement is kind of the cornerstone of how we do service, etc. So one by one, all of that just came in my mind, and I was like, often we blame situations, people, circumstances, or things around us as blocks to be able to accomplish something. But actually, the key to unlocking them may just be prayer. And because Krishna ultimately controls all of these things.
You said prayer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. I've been thinking a lot lately about Occam's razor and how the simplest solution is usually the best. And sometimes we forget the simple acts of bhakti and how powerful they are. So it's a nice reminder. I was inspired by what you said. Thank you, Mukund Hari, for staying up till midnight. Anapaini.
Hi, Krishna. I had a reflection regarding a conversation I had with my aunt a couple weeks ago. So we were on a walk and we were talking about, at that time, Bhagavat Pran, or my cousin, was on a trip to New York where he's staying in the ashram. So I asked my aunt how he was doing and how he was liking the accommodation and what it was like. And we branched into a conversation about how when you stay somewhere for such a short time, things don't really affect you, like that you don't worry too much about accommodation, you don't make such close relationships where you're harmed by anyone's like interactions, and you kind of go just for to enjoy, and you like seize the best and kind of leave the rest. And we're talking about the concept of vacations, and I was thinking about how like our sojourn in the material world is also like that, and if we treated it like what it is, a temporary experience, it would be a lot more enjoyable, and you just kind of look forward to going home, which is our end destination.
It's such a perspective changer, what you just said. Being able to switch. We were talking the other day on one of the shows, I can't remember which one was, but I had thought about similar perspective changing exercise where instead of worrying 80% and 20% being creative, optimistic, then switch it and just be creative, optimistic, and happy 80% and worry 20% about what might happen in the future. And several people said, wow, that really works. I just flipped it over there. And the way that you described it, looking at the whole experience in the material world, is just a quick stopover. It's really helpful. I'll say something more about that later. Part.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Thank you.
So recently I've been going to a like a summer program at UC Berkeley with one of my friends as well. And like over the years I've known him, he's always been like somewhat interested in my spiritual life. Like I've told him a lot about it. And then yesterday he asked me after the program ended, we were walking towards the BART station. He asked me if we wanted to hang out yesterday, and then I told him no. I have like a We had Harinam yesterday, so I'm like, sorry, I have a spiritual program today. And then he asked me what it's about, and then I told him like it's like kind of like spiritual music where we go out into the public and do it so other people can hear and like come in if they want. And then he didn't quite understand what it was. And then we take a left turn to go towards the BART station, and then ISKCON Berkeley is doing a Harinam. And it was so amazing. And then he was actually really interested, but we couldn't stay too long because we had like our train was leaving in like 5 minutes. But he said he wanted to visit the temple because I told him there was like a temple. It's like 15-minute walk from the campus, but I think on Monday I'm gonna take him to the temple. So it was quite amazing how Krishna set that up for us, and I was it was just amazing. So I wanted to share that.
Thank you very much, Bart. Would you put it under the category of being serendipitous?
I I don't truly understand what that word means.
Okay, go ahead and look it up. It's our word for the day. Try to find the etymology of it too, because it's a useful word, actually.
Oh, yes, I definitely do.
Can you put it up?
Yes. Let me open the
How many of you already know what the word means? Put your hand up before meaning goes. Uh-oh, too late. Okay. Read it part, please.
serendipity, a noun, the occurrence and development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way.
Any more about that?
Like, you want me to continue reading?
Origin.
Oh, okay. 1754. Raj, do you mind putting it back up? It was coined by Horace Walpole, suggested by the three princes of Serendip, the title of a fairy tale which the heroes were always making discoveries by accident and sagacity of
You got to be fast.
things they were not in quest of. Yes, I definitely count that as serendipitous because I even tried showing him some pictures, but he didn't quite truly understand it. So it was quite perfect that he got to witness in in action.
Was it on Sproul Plaza?
I don't know the street, unfortunately. I think
Just on the edge of the Berkeley campus, right when you're getting to College
yeah,
Ave.
yeah, yeah. Yes, it was.
That's the devotees always used to have Harinam down there, 1972, and I'd see them there regularly. First time I ever saw Harinam was there at that place. How about sagacity? Does anybody know what that means? Raise your hand if you don't know what it means.
I
Okay.
believe it comes from like the word sagacious,
Oh, and where's that word come from, you think?
like being like a sage. I feel like I
Let's
remember
look it up.
I
It's a great
remember
word, isn't it? We got two winners right here, serendipitous and sagacity. Let's look at them really quick. And somebody also throw both of them in the chat like we usually do too. That'd be really helpful. And anything you can get off of our very helpful site called Etymine. Bart, can you read it?
Sagacious, an adjective, having or showing keen mental discernment and good judgment, shrewd. They were sagacious enough to avoid any outright confrontation. It's derived by, oh, it has a derivative of sagaciously, and its origin is in the early 17th century from Latin sagax or sagat.
And
Why?
Anapani, why don't you read your thing?
okay, sagacious adjective from 1600, keenly perceptive, discerning, originally of persons in reference to the sense of smell. With us plus stem of Latin sagax, of quick perception, see sagacity. The sense of skilled at discovering truths, especially as regards human natures, is by 1640s. It is not considered to be etymologically related to sage.
Interesting, huh? Sometimes it sounds like, yeah, that's definitely going to be it. Well, what do you think of those two words, everybody? I like them, Vaisesika Das. Best words I ever heard, besides Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. Okay. I think it's, oh, good. Sanvi.
So just like a few days ago, our we had like guests over at our house, like our temple president was here, and he was talking to me and my sister about like hosting like a kirtan for the youth. And we were like discussing all of these different things that we need to set up. And I realized there's so much of planning that goes into hosting like all of these events. And it's just like made me appreciate like what he does more because we had to like plan different dates and we had to make sure that everybody who we needed could come and like make sure we had all the mics set up and everything. It's like there's a lot of stuff that goes into hosting a kirtan. And I just realized how much planning it goes into it. So I just wanted to share that.
That's good. Maybe we should have a National Temple President's Appreciation Day.
Thank you.
That's nice you noticed that. It's can be a really hard job to be in leadership because you have to deal with a
Yeah.
lot of things at the same time. Do you think you'd like to do it sometime? Take a lead
Um,
role and take on
maybe.
multiple projects at the
But
same time?
yeah, we're he just gave me and my sister the task of organizing the kirtan, and that's already a lot. So I don't you know.
Yeah, one step at a time. That's really exciting that you got that service. Nicely done.
Yeah. We're planning on doing it in August since we're not gonna I mean in like later August, like 20th something, because we're gonna be in India. Like this is the last week that GM will have for like a few weeks because we'll be in India.
Well, we're going to be missing you, but we're eager to hear how it all went when you get back.
Thank you.
All ears. Sri Tulsi.
I actually had a question now, I think that's it.
Okay. And Anapani will translate anything that we miss.
So last Sunday, we were at the temple and we were distributing tuna powder items to public billionaires. And there was this one devotee who approached us, and he was a Jain, and he seemed pretty interested in the Bhagavatam. So we kept on insisting him to take a Bhagavatam and give a small donation. But he didn't want, but he kept on insisting himself that he couldn't because in his religion that he followed, Jainism, he didn't believe in keeping religious books piled up in the house. And in that circumstance, what would be the proper um answer for that? You know, if someone like doesn't want to take the positive because the religion that they're following doesn't allow.
Okay, Anapani.
This is my understanding. So she was last Sunday, she was distributing Srimad Bhagavatam, and I believe she was distributing to a Jewish devotee, and he showed some inclination towards taking the Bhagavatam, but had a clash with his views. Could you repeat that part again? What he didn't? Um, he was actually a Jain. He was following Jainism. Oh, a Jain. My bad. Okay, yeah.
Jane.
And yeah, and he was saying how in his religion that like he doesn't believe in taking religious books and keeping it at his house. So what would be the proper way of like kind of
Okay,
distribute the positive?
so she was saying that the Jain person didn't believe in having religious texts in his house,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah, I've run into that before. What else, Hanapani? Say the rest.
I think that's the gist, right, Sri Tulsi?
I've
And
had that happen before. I remember a couple, and I insisted they take it, and then it came back in the mail back to us. They're serious about that. Yeah. Well, so they went bookless, right?
you know, we still took one of the haircuts books, but they didn't take the finger positive. So we
Oh,
still took one of the
I
haircuts
guess it just means big books.
books.
Well, thanks for telling us. We're gonna have to research that and see if there's any loopholes in their script, in their Grunt Sahib, so they could get around that. Okay, Saina.
Hare Krishna. So, just a few days ago, I was reading from Canto 1 of the Srimad Bhagavatam about Narad Muni's, past life. And although I've heard the story about, how he was the son of a maidservant and he got the opportunity to serve the sages, it was just so beautifully described in the Bhagavatam. And it really just reminded me about the power of like associating with, pure devotees and how just by getting the remnants, he was able to get elevated to this platform where he was, even though he lost his mother, he was able to have the maturity and like go and concentrate within meditation, and he was able to understand the Krishna kathas and all these elevated conversations the sages was having, and he got that ruchi. And so it just reminded me of how beautiful and important association of pure devotees is, and I wish I had more of that in my life. But I get some of it through you, Chan, so that's good.
Wow, thanks, Saina. That was really nicely. You stated that very nicely, and it was it was a good reminder of how important it is to associate with elevated devotees. So true about Narada Muni. Amazing. Okay, we're going to welcome Ananya. Just got here. Good to see you, Ananya. Must be still hot where you are. I see a fan going.
Yeah, good morning.
You're from Toronto, and Ryan's sitting in front of a Rath Yatra cart. Fantastic. Okay, now we're going to do, you have to be fast on your on your raise your hand for this, but we'll take 3 only. And a favorite verse and purport. A favorite verse and purport to read. 1, Vaisesika. Now's your chance. What's your favorite verse and purport? Not of all times, because it's hard to choose, but the ones you like right now. 2 more takers. 5, 4, 3, 2. One more. We need one more. Your favorite verse and purport. 1.5, 0.05. Una más, por favor. Or ache. 3. We've got our 3. Okay. Vaisesika, tell us your verse and purport, and Rajras Bhavan will put it up, and you'll read it to us. If you...
Okay, I'm forgetting the number, but it's the first canto, 8th chapter. I don't know what verse number it is, but it's Vipada Santita Sasvat. So I can check real quick.
Is it the first? Let's see, I'm looking at my chart. It's the
Oh, it's,
verse in the Kunti prayers.
yeah, it's
7 verses in.
I think it's
1920. It's number 20, 24. 25? Oh,
yeah, 25.
okay. Right, because there's a V1 in front of that too, isn't there? That's why I made the mistake. Okay, go ahead. Read the verse and purport and then tell us why you like it.
All right. Should I do the verse translation or purport just the translation?
Verse.
Okay.
Verse.
Sorry,
word,
Marge. I didn't.
verse, word for word, translation, purport. Give us a little class.
Okay. Okay. Vipada Santita Sasvat Tatra Tatra Jagat Guru Bhavato Darshanam Yatyat Apunha Bhava Darshanam Vipada calamities. Santu, let there be. Ta, all. Sasvat, again and again. Tatra, there. Tatra, and there. Jagat Guru, O Lord of the universe. Bhavata, your. Darshanam, meeting. Yat, that which. Syat, is. Apuna, not again. Bhavadarshanam, seeing repetition of birth and death. Translation. I wish that all those calamities would happen again and again so that we could say you again and again. For seeing you means that we will no longer see repeated births and deaths. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Generally, the distressed, the needy, the intelligent, and the inquisitive who have performed some pious activities worship or begin to worship the Lord. Others, who are thriving on misdeeds only, regardless of status, cannot approach the Supreme due to being misled by the illusionary energy. Therefore, for a pious person, if there's some calamity, there is no other alternative than to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Constantly remembering the lotus feet of the Lord means preparing for liberation from birth and death. Therefore, even though there are so-called calamities, they are welcome because they give us an opportunity to remember the Lord, which means liberation. One who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, which are accepted as the most suitable boat for crossing the ocean of nescience, can achieve liberation as easily as one leaps over the holes made by the hoofs of a calf. Such persons are meant to reside in the abode of the Lord, and they have nothing to do with a place where there is a danger in every step. This material world is certified by the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita as a dangerous place full of calamities. Less intelligent persons prepare plans to adjust to those calamities without knowing that the nature of this place is itself full of calamities. They have no information of the abode of the Lord, which is full of bliss and without trace of calamity. The duty of a sane person, therefore, is to be undisturbed by worldly calamities, which are sure to happen in all circumstances. Suffering all sorts of unavoidable misfortunes, one should make progress in spiritual realization because that is the mission of human life. The spirit soul is transcendental to all material calamities. Therefore, the so-called calamities are called false. A man may see a tiger swallowing him in a dream, and he may cry for this calamity. Actually, there is no tiger, and there is no suffering. It is simply a case of dreams. In the same way, all calamities of life are said to be dreams. If someone is lucky enough to get in contact with the Lord by devotional service, it is all a gain. It is all gain. Contact with the Lord by any one of the 9 devotional services is always a forward step on the path going back to Godhead.
Marisaki, would you give a short explanation of it or just any of your thoughts? Actually, just tell us why you like this verse so much. And if you would be so kind and you're up for the task, please relate a verse from Prahlad Maharaj's prayers that you know that goes with anything you say or that's in the purport.
Can I get a hint for the first line? Because I'm remembering the exact verse from Prahlad Maharaj's prayers, which is Dukkha Shokagnina Sakala Yonishidayamana Dukkaushadam Tadapi. I'm forgetting the first line though.
Okay. Dukkaushadam. It's the first line is, hold on. It starts with a Dukkaushadam tadapi dukkhamatadiyaham.
It's Yasmat Priya.
Yasmat priya priya viyoga samyoga jam. Thank
So
you.
the verse that I wanted to relate to this chapter, to this verse, is Yasmat Priya Priya Viyoga Samyoga Janma Shokagnina Sakalayo Nishidayamana Dukkaushadam Tadapi Dukkam Atadiyaham Bhuman Brahmami Vadameta Vadasya Yogam. And this verse talks about how in this material world there are a lot of miseries or a lot of suffering, and sometimes the remedies you may want to take them, but they're actually worse than the misery itself. So it talks about taking shelter of the Lord. And that reminded me of this verse where Queen Kunti is praying that, let me see you again and again, because by seeing you, that means we will no longer have to go through repeated births and deaths. And I thought this was a beautiful correlation because it shows the mood and intention in which Queen Kunti goes to Krishna, as we heard in also this morning's class from the first verse, and how she's taken shelter of the Lord. And in many of the verses, she also talks about how Krishna has constantly come to their protection and saved them from constant dangers. In the previous verse, it talks about Vishan Mahagne Purushada Darshanad, and then I can't remember the rest of the lines. But
yeah, wow. Keep going, keep going.
So in the previous verse, it's Vishan Mahagne Purushada Darshanad.
Asatsaya.
Asat Sabhaya
Vanavasa Krishna.
Mrithe Mrithe Neka Maharatastro.
Dronyatshatash chasma hare bidakshitaha.
Yes, so in this verse, she talks about how Krishna has saved them from so many dangers, and now has saved them from Ashvatthama. So it shows. It's been one of my favorite verses because it shows Queen Kunti's, in every verse. It shows this underlying intention that she has within her heart of surrender to Krishna, despite all that may be going on. And it's been something that I've been reflecting on because I'm in this place in my life where I'm not really decided in any aspect. So, and I don't have control over a lot of things. So it's nice to know that why should I worry when I can just take shelter of Krishna?
I loved your talk. Fantastic. And it got really personal there too. So it was really powerful. That's what makes a powerful talk. I think we can all relate to one degree or another. Thank you very much, Madurisaki. Fantastic. Vrajras Bhavana.
The verse that I was thinking about, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's been on my mind for about a month because I've been studying it. I can just share my screen. All right.
Yes.
in the second canto, second chapter, verse 35. Should I read it in the same way?
Same way.
Okay.
Fantastic. Great verse. Go ahead.
Bhagavan sarva bhuteshu lakshita swatmana hari drisher buddhyadibir drashta lakshaner anumapake. Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, sarva, all, bhuteshu, in the living entities, lakshita, is visible, swa-atmana, along with the self, hari, the Lord, drishye, by what is seen, buddhi adibhi, by intelligence, drashta, one who sees, lakshane, by different signs, anumapake, by hypothesis. Translation: the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is in every living being, along with the individual soul, and this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from our intelligence. Purport: the general argument of the common man is that since the Lord is not visible to our eyes, how can one either surrender unto him or render transcendental loving service unto him? To such a common man, here is a practical suggestion given by Srila Sukadev Goswami as to how one can perceive the Supreme Lord by reason and perception. Actually, the Lord is not perceivable by our present materialized eyes. But when one is convinced of the presence of the Lord by a practical service attitude, there is a revelation by the Lord's mercy, and such a pure devotee of the Lord can perceive the Lord's presence always and everywhere. He can perceive that intelligence is the form direction of the Paramatma plenary portion of the personality of Godhead. The presence of Paramatma in everyone's company is not very difficult to realize, even for a common man. The procedure is as follows. One can perceive one's self-identification and feel positively that he exists. He may not feel it very abruptly, but by using a little intelligence, he can feel that he is not the body. He can feel that the hand, the leg, the head, the hair, and the limbs are all his bodily parts and parcels. But as such, the hand, the leg, the head, etc., cannot be identified with his self. Therefore, just by using intelligence, he can distinguish and separate his self from other things that he sees. So the natural conclusion is that the living being, either man or beast, is the seer, and he sees besides himself all other things. So there is a difference between the seer and the seen. Now, by use of little intelligence, we can also readily agree that the living being who sees the things beyond himself by ordinary vision has no power to see or to move independently. All our actions and perceptions depend on various forms of energy supplied to us by nature in various combinations. Our senses of perception and of action, that is to say, our five perceptive senses of hearing, touch, sight, taste, and smell, as well as our five senses of action, namely hands, legs, speech, evacuation organs, and reproductive organs, and also our three subtle senses, namely mind, intelligence, and ego, 13 senses in all, are applied to us by various arrangements of gross or subtle forms of natural energy. And it is equally evident that our objects of perception are nothing but the products of the inexhaustible permutations and combinations of the forms taken by natural energy. As this conclusively proves that the ordinary living being has no independent power of perception or of motion, and as we undoubtedly feel our existence being conditioned by nature's energy, we can conclude that he who sees is spirit, and that the senses as well as the objects of perception are material. The spiritual quality of the seer is manifest in our dissatisfaction with the limited state of materially conditioned existence. That is the difference between spirit and matter. There are some less intelligent arguments that matter develops the power of seeing and moving as a certain organic development. But such an argument cannot be accepted because there is no experimental evidence that matter has anywhere produced a living entity. Trust no future, however pleasant. Idle talks regarding future development of matter into spirit are actually foolish because no matter has ever developed the power of seeing or moving in any part of the world. Therefore, it is definite that matter and spirit are two different identities, and this conclusion is arrived at by the use of intelligence. Now we come to the point that the things which are seen by a little use of intelligence cannot be animate, unless we accept someone as the user of or director of the intelligence. Intelligence gives one direction like some higher authority, and the living being cannot see or move or eat or do anything without the use of intelligence. When one fails to take advantage of intelligence, he becomes a deranged man, and so a living being is dependent on intelligence or the direction of a superior being. Such intelligence is all-pervading. Every living being has his intelligence, and this intelligence, being the direction of some higher authority, is just like a father giving direction to his son. The higher authority who is present and residing within every individual living being is the super self. It's a long purport, so I'm not sure if we want to finish it, but
Go, 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 go.
at this point in our investigation, we may consider the following question. On the one hand, we realize that all our perceptions and activities are conditioned by arrangements of material nature. Yet, we also ordinarily feel and say, I am perceiving, or I am doing. Therefore, we can say that our material senses of perception and action are moving because we are identifying the self with the material body, and that the superior principle of superself is guiding and supplying us according to our desire. By taking advantage of the guidance of superself in the form of intelligence, we can either continue to study and to put into practice our conclusion that I am not this body, or we can choose to remain in the false material identification, fancying ourselves to be the possessors and doers. Our freedom consists in orienting our desire either toward the ignorant material misconception or the true spiritual conception. We can easily attain to the true spiritual conception by recognizing the super self, Paramatma, to be our friend and guide, and by dovetailing our intelligence with superior intelligence of Paramatma. The super self and the individual self are both spirit, and therefore the super self and the individual self are both qualitatively one and distinct from matter. But the super self and the individual self cannot be on an equal level because the super self gives direction or supplies intelligence, and the individual self follows the direction, and thus actions are performed properly. The individual is completely dependent on the direction of the super self because in every step the individual self follows the direction of the super self in the matter of seeing, hearing, thinking, feeling, willing, etc. So as far as common sense is concerned, we come to the conclusion that there are three identities, namely matter, spirit, and super spirit. Now, if we go to the Bhagavad Gita or the Vedic intelligence, we can further understand that all three identities, namely matter, individual spirit, and the super spirit, are all dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The super self is a partial representation or a plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhagavad Gita affirms that the Supreme Personality of Godhead dominates all over the material world by his partial representation only. God is great, and he cannot be simply an order supplier of the individual selves. Therefore, the super self cannot be a full representation of the Supreme Self, Purushottama, the absolute personality of Godhead. Realization of the super self by the individual self is the beginning of self-realization, and by the progress of such self-realization, one is able to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead by intelligence, by the help of authorized scriptures, and, principally, by the grace of the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita is the preliminary conception of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the further explanation of this science of Godhead. So if we stick to our determination and pray for the mercy of the director of intelligence, sitting within the same bodily tree, like a bird sitting with another bird, as explained in the Upanishads, certainly the purport of the revealed information in the Vedas becomes clear to our vision, and there is no difficulty in realizing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. The intelligent man, therefore, after many births of such use of intelligence, surrenders himself at the lotus feet of Vasudeva, as confirmed by the Bhagavad Gita 7:19.
Bravissimo. Okay, tell us why you like it.
I like it because Prabhupada goes into a lot of detail and makes very simple points in how one can think about how they're conscious to begin with, how they're different from the body, which is a major step. And when they do that, then they try to understand, then who am I actually? And we are this individual self. And in this purport, he doesn't go into the details of our spirit soul and our connection with Krishna directly, but he says that this individual self is somehow able to perform actions without actually having control over what's happening. And the way that the self can do that is by desiring to do something, and then the super self or the Paramatma basically fulfills that desire and does that action for them. Also, this super self gives that individual self intelligence in the form of inspiration or instinct, where the individual self can think of things that come from a place that is outside of their own conscious effort, as Sadhaputta Prabhu says. And so that's where it's beyond actually what we can do on our own. And so that something is guiding us, something is supplying us with intelligence, and that's the super self. And then finally he ends it with that's how we can by surrendering to the super self, by understanding that there's Krishna, we're all part of Krishna, we can go into that process of devotional service. And that's the whole point of this purport in the end. I love how Prabhupada ends it in that way.
And what's the logic of how there must be Bhagavan and not just super spirit?
Because the super spirit is almost like an order carrier for us, where we're giving it, we have a desire, and then super spirit fulfills it for us. But that cannot be Bhagavan. Bhagavan is way more than that, and that's a great argument also that Prabhupada brings up.
It's a masterpiece, isn't it? Thanks for bringing that up. Thanks everyone for listening through the whole thing too. Because when you take time to hear through the whole purports and you read more and you hear more, you develop a taste for it. You know, the mind is a malleable instrument. And when you practice hearing over longer and longer periods of time, you become accustomed to it and it becomes more and more beneficial. And you would notice the results in your life when you're able to hear more and more. Excellently done. Nice reading. And thank you for explaining it afterwards. Everyone ready? Number 3. We're all still there. Ready to go? Okay, let's hear a little more. Anapayani Bhakti, Devi Dasi is going to tell us her favorite verse for the moment and read it for us.
It's 2:136. Okay. Vayam sitadvyakaranam vichitram manurmanisha manujo nivasa gandharva vidya daracharanapsara svara smritir asuranika virya. Translation: Varieties of birds are indications of his masterful artistic sense. Manu, the father of mankind, is the emblem of his standard intelligence, and humanity is his residence. The celestial species of human beings, like the Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, Charanas, and angels, all represent his musical rhythm, and the demoniac soldiers are representations of his wonderful prowess. Purport: The aesthetic sense of the Lord is manifested in the artistic, colorful creation of varieties of birds like the peacock, parrot, and cuckoo. The celestial species of human beings like the Gandharvas and Vidyadharas can sing wonderfully and can entice even the minds of the heavenly demigods. Their musical rhythm represents the musical sense of the Lord. How then can he be impersonal? His musical taste, artistic sense, and standard intelligence, which is never fallible, are different signs of his supreme personality. The Manu Samhita is the standard law book for humanity, and every human being is advised to follow this great book of social knowledge. Human society is the residential quarters for the Lord. This means that the human being is meant for God realization and association with God. This life is a chance for the conditioned soul to regain his eternal God consciousness and thus fulfill the mission of life. Maharaj Prahlad is the right type of representative of the Lord and the family of Asuras. None of the living beings is away from the Lord's gigantic body. Each and every one has a particular duty in relation to the Supreme Body. Disruption in the matter of discharging the specific duty assigned to each and every living being is the cause of disharmony between one living being and another. But when the relation is re-established in relation with the Supreme Lord, there is complete unity between all living beings, even up to the limit of the wild animals and human society. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed this living unity in the jungle of Madhya Pradesh, where even the tigers, elephants, and many other ferocious animals perfectly cooperated in glorifying the Supreme Lord. This is the way to peace and that is the way to peace and amity all over the world.
Wow. What a great verse and purport. Would you like to make any comments and reveal why you like it?
Yes, if the purport could be screen shared. I like the part that was saying how it described Manu, the celestial, humanity as his residence. Could you scroll into the purport? Yeah, so it said human society, if it's the residential quarters for the Lord, it means that this body is meant for God realization and association with God. And it kind of indicates how this vessel is the most useful in self realization. And then I also liked the argument for how Krishna is personal through his musical taste, artistic sense, and standard intelligence. And I also liked how, if you could scroll to the translation, I think the last one related to the demoniac soldiers. It
Mm.
shows how everyone kind of fits into Krishna's creation, not just the good people.
It's so poetical. And I agree that point about the demoniac soldiers at the end, it's a little unexpected. So you read it, then have that sense of how he's everything. Yasmin yato yarhi yena cha yasya yasma. Yasma yata yarutayas tad utarasta. Ito, I'm sorry. Yasmin yato yarhi yena cha yasya yasmat. Yes. Yata. Go ahead, Madhuri Saki. You there? Yasmin yato
Yes.
yarhi
I,
yena yasya yasmat. Yasma yata yat utarast wa para parova. Bhava karoti vikaroti pratak swabhava sanchoditas tarakilam bhavata swarupam. Nicely done, Anapayani. Very good. Any verse to relate?
I was thinking this might be a bit of a stretch, but for Prahlad Maharaj's prayers, Tvam Vayur Agnir Avanir Vayadam Bhumatra Pranendriyani Hridayam Chid Anugrahascha Sarva Tvam Eva Saguno Vigunascha Bhuman. Oh, I might have. Let me find that one. Oh, wait, no, that was right. Okay.
Sorry.
Sarvam Tvam Eva Saguno Vigunascha Bhuman Nanya Tvadastyapi Mano Vachasane Ruktam. And that's the one that says, Supreme Lord, you are air, earth, fire, water, etc. And it just goes into describing how Krishna is everything. So I thought that encompassed the point of the previous shloka.
Definitely in the same genre, isn't it? And there's several verses like that in Prahlad where he's expressing how you're everything, you're everywhere, you're in all your energies. Brings us back to that vision. Anybody hear anything from the three verses that was remarkable in your mind that you wanted to reflect back?
I love the point about the birds and how we can see Krishna's aesthetic sense through the way that the birds are designed, and like the way the universe is. And I was thinking that just by looking around at all the different flowers and plants and animals, we can see Krishna's design sense and like the way he likes to design things. which is so nice.
Well, let's see a few birds then. Brajaras Bhavana, can you find uh, a catalog of colorful birds real quick? It is amazing because, oh, wow. Look at that pink one on the left. Is that a real bird? Can you enlarge that one? Wow, look at the bottom left. It's kind of like a fashion show. You go and you see all these special cuts and colors and everything like that. Krishna's done it with all the birds. That's amazing. Wow. That's what you're looking at is Krishna's aesthetic sense. What is it specifically? His artistic sense. Kaylee Kunja Kumari, is that what it is?
I think it was aesthetic, like his in the beginning, that was the word, I think.
Okay. And aesthetics, plural noun, usually treated as singular, a set of principles concerned with the nature and appreciation of beauty, especially in art. The branch of philosophy that deals with the principles of beauty and artistic taste. Any other points from what you heard? Sharing means caring. Navya, where are you? Are you at like an airport or something?
Yes, Maharaj, I'm coming back from Australia.
Australia, you're tuned in from Australia?
I'm I'm in Houston right now,
You're going to
waiting for
Australia.
my flight.
Wow. You're a world traveler. That's a long flight, eh? Well,
Yes.
thanks for tuning in all the way from the airport. I think we're pretty impressed. Anapayani Bhakti, what did you
I
hear that you liked?
From the verse that Bradras shared, I like the point about the differentiation between Super Soul and Bhagavan. You kind of discussed it about the concept of how like God can't be an order carrier, like that's just for us inside our hearts, but the real one. I don't know
Let's
how to
read that paragraph
I'm
again. It's
forgetting
so important. Anapayani, this time you read that last the point where it makes, try to find that place where it makes the point. It's really a cool point.
Okay. The super self is a partial representation or plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Bhagavad Gita affirms that the Supreme Personality of Godhead dominates all over the material world by his partial representation only. God is great, and he cannot be simply an order supplier of the individual selves. Therefore, the super self cannot be a full representation of the Supreme Self, Purushottama, the Absolute Personality of Godhead.
Just a couple sentences that explain the logic, right?
Yeah.
You know, it reminds me, and then in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that Uttara is talking to her son Parikshit before he leaves, and she says to him that I see devotees with an unusual depth of love for Krishna. There must be a place for them, a special place where they reside so they can relate to Krishna in that way. And that's when that's part of her request to him to recount what he heard. And so she retells the Bhagavatam, but in a succinct form. That's the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And it brings us all the way to the journey that Gopakumar takes back to Goloka. If you don't know where it is, or you don't have any conception of it, there's no possibility of thinking of it. And one of the ways that we go anywhere is by pointing our attention in that direction. Everything we attain in this world comes about by the force of our own consciousness. So we're engaged in a way of transcendentalizing our intelligence and our consciousness so that we're fixed on the supreme abode of Krishna. Can anybody think of a verse in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says you can go wherever you like? Anapayini?
Yanti deva vrta devan prithanyanti pitirvrta bhutani yanti bhuteja yanti mam. Yeah, I'm forgetting.
Oh, Pima. Let's look at it. Fantastic. Nice that you could remember that. And let's see the verse for everybody. Krishna says in this verse, I'm just paraphrasing, obviously. Little Jiva, it's up to you. You can go wherever you want. How about Saina? Would you read the word for word and the translation, please?
Okay. Okay. Yanti, go. Devrata, worshippers of the demigods. Devan, to the demigods. Prathan, to the ancestors. Yanti, go. Prativrata, worshippers of the ancestors. Bhutani, to the ghosts and spirits. Yanti, go. Bhutaiyaha, worshippers of the ghosts and spirits. Yanti, go. Mat, my. Yagana, devotees. Api, but. Mom, unto me.
Translation.
Translation. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings, and those who worship me will live with me.
Sanvi, tell us how that works.
So I think it's because if you continuously worship um like a certain thing, like in this case it would be like ancestors or like Krishna, because like then you're focusing on them a lot, and um whatever you remember at the time of death, that's like what you become, or like where you'll go. So like if you constantly worship Krishna like your entire life, then you're gonna remember Krishna, and then you're gonna go live with him or like be with him.
Wow, you put that together lightning fast. A whole string of shastrically related thoughts. You went into, do you know which chapter you're quoting from when you're saying those things?
Not really.
Isn't it the 8th
You know?
chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Maharaj?
Sign it is. Let's have a look at it so we can verify that. Are you two in the same house?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought so. Okay, let's see it. 8th chapter. Proof positive that
It's like 8.5, right?
yeah, it's good to read, live, go all the way to the beginning. I'm going to read a little bit to you. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are fruit of activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. Who is the Lord of sacrifice and how does he live in the body, O Madhusudan? And how can those engaged in devotional service know at the time of death? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called Adhyatma, the self. Action pertaining to the development of the material bodies of the living entities is called karma, or fruit of activities. First, open that number 3. I want to show you something. But just remember, you heard it here first. Go down to the purport. Okay. So Brahman is indestructible and eternally existing, and its constitution is not changed at any time. But beyond Brahman, there is Parabrahman. Brahman refers to the living entity, and Parabrahman refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The constitutional position of living entity is different from the position he takes in the material world. In material consciousness, his nature is to try to be the Lord of matter. But in spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness, his position is to serve the Supreme. When the living entity is in material consciousness, he has to take on various bodies in the material world. That is called karma, wait for it, or varied creation by the force of material consciousness. Can you put those last two sentences in the chat box? This, everybody, in my humble opinion, if I may, is a fantastic way to describe karma. Saina, read that, would you please? That's in the chat box, what Brajaras Bhavana just put in there.
When the living entity is in material consciousness, he has to take on various bodies in the material world. That is called karma, or varied creation by the force of material consciousness.
It's it's the foundation of what you were saying. And I especially like that part. Karma is varied creation by the force of material consciousness. Okay, we can go back to the board. I'll get to the verses that Saina, you're the one who said it, right? That you knew where the verse was? Yeah. Was it? Yeah. Oh, best of the embodied being's physical nature, which is constantly changing, is called Adibhuta. The material manifestation, the universal form of the Lord, which includes all the demigods, like those of the sun and moon, is called Adidaiva. And I, the Supreme Lord, represented as a super soul in the heart of every embodied being, am called Ayagya, the Lord of sacrifice. Okay, over to you, Saina. Read these next two verses.
And whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail.
Yep, there you have it. Okay. Well, tell us what we've done today so far. Kelly Kunja Kumari, what did we do? Starting from the beginning.
So today we took realizations, and then you three people each shared their favorite verse and purport, and we discussed those verses. First, they gave a little reason why they liked it and what they liked about it, and then we all discussed what we liked about those three verses. And then that led into this discussion about like where we go at the time of death, and like what we think about leads to that.
So we weren't wasting any time, were we? It's all Krishna Katha. Okay.